All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Do Hard Things podcast. I'm your host, Jay Teagues, certified high performance coach, transformational mindset coach. And on this podcast, we have great discussions with engaging guests. And in today's episode, I have Lorenzo Valdivia. How are you doing, brother?
Good. How you doing?
Man, it's good to have you back. You were on an earlier episode. The number escapes me. I should have probably prepped my show a little bit better, but it was back in time where you had just launched the Force Multiplier podcast, and I'm excited to talk to you today about self-defense and more specifically how runners can defend themselves, given the recent tragic events of Eliza Fletcher that happened in Memphis. So,
Yes.
but before we get into that, just real quick, just some housekeeping notes for the listeners out there. If you haven't done so already, make sure you smash that subscribe button so you're notified of future episodes. If you weren't aware, if you're listening to us out there on Spotify or iTunes, a couple things. One, it would mean a lot if you left us a review. I read every one of them, and it helps us grow the empire and helps us with the algorithm. So people that are out there looking for awesome podcasts will find the Do Hard Things Nation. And two, if you didn't know, you could actually see our smiling faces over in YouTube. I don't have a very big presence on YouTube yet, but we would love to get some more subscribers over there. So if you actually want to see us, you want to see our ugly mugs today, talking about this topic, you can watch us over there and subscribe over there. And I'm going to start live streaming all the podcasts, so you can go check us out over there too. What else? If you got any value from this episode or any of the other episodes, take a screenshot and share it with your running friends, because what we're going to talk about today is the topic of self-defense and runners and being more aware and resilient. This episode is sponsored by DHT Coaching and Consulting, which is founded by yours truly. I offer one-on-one coaching, group coaching, high-performance leadership workshops, the Forge Mastermind group. So if you want to connect, you want to level up, you want to get you want to start dominating your goals. And Lorenzo is actually a member of the Forge Mastermind. We can talk a little bit about that today and how it's amplified your business and your life. But that's go to jtiegs.com, JAYTIEGS.com, or go to dohardthingsnation.com. And there's a weird buzzing noise coming across.
Yeah,
I don't know what
you
just did.
what it is.
He's trying to figure that out. So as I finish up this ad, he'll continue. Okay, there we go. The buzzing's gone. Go to dohardthingsnation.com. You can see what events we have going on over there. You can go grab yourself some Do Hard Things apparel. We're dropping new items every week. And if you'd like to learn more about working with me or your organization, go to jtiegs.com, JAYTIEGS.com. So, all right. So today we have Lorenzo Valdivia. So a little bit about Lorenzo. Lorenzo is a former sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. He's now a law enforcement officer and the CEO of Force Multiplier Defensive Systems. He is host of the Force Multiplier podcast, where he discusses defensive tactics and the mindset for first responders, and instructor trainer with strategic self-defense and gunfighting tactics. Lorenzo is an expert in self-defense, which is why I had him invited him back to talk about the topic of runners, and maybe give some strategies and some insights from a law enforcement professional on what someone could do to increase their survivability and increase the odds if something were to happen, capture and conviction of someone that perpetrates a crime. So, yeah, Lorenzo, thanks for being here, brother.
I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on again, and get into this topic that, as you know, is a passion of mine.
Yeah, and it's, as a father of triplets, a husband of an avid runner and a running coach, and just a lot of women, I've always been concerned for their safety. It's unfortunate, in the running community now, there's a heightened sense of awareness because of this tragic event that had happened, and so everyone's kind of it's a topic that it's how our society works, right? Something tragic happens and everyone's aware. So I'm like, it'd be a great opportunity to bring you on as an expert to see what your insights are and help someone out there, like I said, to mitigate and increase their survivability. So let's start off with this. Why are you so passionate about self-defense and tactics?
So I'm passionate about it because a couple things. One, I want people to gain a confidence, right? Through self-defense, being able to protect yourself, you gain a level of confidence that you can't gain through other things. Not only that, but When you're confident at that level, you're less likely for people to attack you, to pick on you. And the last thing is I don't like bullies. And people that attack other people, that's exactly what they are. And this through conversations we've had, is I'm very much against that. And if I can find a way to help people to be able to protect themselves, protect their family, protect those things that they've worked real hard for, which it could be their personal growth, then that's very important for me.
Yeah, we live in a world where there's evil out there, and it rears its ugly head from time to time. I think by and large, we live in a pretty safe place. The last guest that I had on, Taryn Scheidemantel, she's a runner,
Mhm.
and she talked about her experiences here in our hometown. And I really didn't understand. I didn't know that she had the experiences that she had until this event came to light. But even in my small town, I feel relatively safe, but there's still evil because she experienced it here. And I think that we're fooling ourselves if we're not taking into account, and we have to take an active role in our own personal safety and our own defense. We're not trying to make anyone a law enforcement officer, or we're just trying to increase chances of survival is what, the kind of the topic and the theme we want to talk about today. But for people that are just like oblivious, they want to put their head in the sand. I just don't think that's a wise choice, because we only have one opportunity at life, and there are evil people out there that are willing to do harm to other people. And
Yeah.
so what are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I agree with you. Talk to people, and they say, well, it's never going to happen to me, or there's it's a 1% chance that it'll happen to me. Um, I think for me, self defense in the physical piece of it is what's important. And what I mean by that is, um, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, and if I am, let me know. But the false sense of security in carrying a firearm, carrying something like that people think that that's going to be the end all be all. But I think where the big piece is that people need to understand and train in the physical aspect, the time that allows you to get to those tools.
Mhm.
Um,
So,
Go ahead.
so yeah, you're talking like the physical, the hand to hand combat, if you will, or whatever you need to do to. Well, you really, we've talked a lot about it. What you really
Mhm.
ultimately want to do is break contact and give yourself space.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I guess one of the best ways that I can kind of describe this to you is, in training, right? We go to the range, and the people that are carrying guns, or carrying firearms or tasers or pepper spray. The time that you don't want to use that is while that person is physically on you, while they're actually physically attacking you, because if they're close enough to touch you and grab you, they're also close enough to grab that firearm from you and use it against you. They're also close enough to grab that taser or that pepper spray out of your hands, and now you're bringing in something that drastically escalates the danger of the situation.
So, for someone that is apprehensive about training or seeking training, what advice would you give them?
So I think a lot of people are scared because they're to train, because they don't want that. Well, I'm going to go to training, I'm going to get beat up, right? I'm going to
Mhm.
have to get punched, I'm going to have to get kicked. And if you're in an effective program, you can drill the techniques without the intensity. And I think that's what a lot of people are scared of, is that piece of it. And the way we kind of describe that is, if me and you, Jay, we were to go into a room and we were to train together, right, in boxing. Let's say me and you are boxing, and we'll walk in, and me and you put on gloves, and I say, hey, we're gonna go at about 25%. All right, we're both we're gonna give it a true 25%, and we're gonna spar, right? And we spar, and man, you give it to me, right? Cross my T's, dot my I's. I mean, I lose that. Well, then I go, well, you know what, Jay? If we were going 100%, I'd have you, right? Well, imagine this. If we both went 25% and then we both go 100%, the results are going to be the same, right? It's just going to hurt a lot worse. And I look at that same thing with training, and people that are maybe apprehensive against training it because they're worried about the intensity level, right? That's going to come with it. If you train at 20%, let's say, and we bump that up to 30%, the results are going to be the same. The pain that's inflicted, the intensity is going to rise, but the end result is going to be the same. And I say that because if people will get out there and train at a lower level, when it comes to real world and they get to that 100% where they're going to achieve the same results, without that fear, without hitting that fear of pain in training, of, that repetitious, painful stuff that people don't like.
Yeah, no, it hurts, right? I just feel like it's doing the hard things, right?
Yeah.
We gravitate toward being comfortable, and going to train
Yeah.
is uncomfortable. And I think a lot of places that host training, I go up to my local gym, and it's kind of intimidating. It's
Mhm.
intimidating. And I think a lot of what we're talking about today is going to be, probably geared toward females, but you're going into a facility and there's a bunch of alpha males in there, and they're, I could see it being incredibly, it's kind of intimidating to
Yeah.
me. I couldn't imagine, for like Lacey, my wife, who's, she's just petite. She's the sweetest thing. Like, I think she would get in there with some encouragement, but I think, it's just, it's intimidating for people.
Yeah. And I think the thing to remember is all of those people started where you're at, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember when I, pre getting into jiu-jitsu, right? This is back in, 2014 timeframe. I was going to the gym and I was on the strength and conditioning side, and I would look over at the jiu-jitsu guys and I'm like, man, that stuff's cool. Like, I like that. But I mean, look at those guys. They're doing stuff and not thinking about it. They're making people do stuff they don't want to do. And it brought a level of, like, I don't want to jump in there and not be where they're at. And one day, I finally committed and I said, you know what? I'm going to a class. I'm going to go check this thing out and see what it is. And what I found is all those guys, they remember where they started, right? They remember that their first time walking in. So they helped me learn. They helped me understand things that I didn't understand about the human body, and how to take advantage of leverage and movement. So they're just like you are. They're where you were at one point, and they're gonna
Yeah.
help you get to that level. You're not gonna get thrown into the lion's den and everybody just eat you alive, because I mean, if they did that, people wouldn't be in gyms, right? If I would have walked in and all these guys just attacked me and just made me feel literally like I knew nothing, I promise you I wouldn't be there. But here I am, what, 6-7 years later, and I still go every opportunity I get.
Yeah, it's just the same with the running community. Someone that hasn't been running and then they toe the line at the first 5K or 10K and they're at the start. There's always this intrepidation of, I'm just feeling like a fish out of water. Everyone's going to smoke me. I don't know how this is going to turn out. Everyone's watching me and I'm not going to finish the race, And then what happens is you get in there and you start meeting with people and you realize that this is an amazing community of supportive people that are by and large there to help you. And you can for most activities and most things, there's always that initial apprehension, right? But it's just like anything else. And people remember where they started. They want to, and I think most people in most sports or disciplines are there to help try to grow that community as well. So it may seem intimidating on the outside, but if you actually connected and talked to them, I think by and large, what you'll find is that people are very welcoming. Like you said, every black
Oh yeah.
belt, right, was a white belt that never quit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially. And while we're on this topic of martial arts, I think something that's important for the listeners and people that are looking for somewhere to train, I think it's important that they also look for somewhere that is self-defense based. There's a lot of martial arts out there, right? I'm a martial artist myself, and there's competition stuff, there's self-defense stuff, and I think it's important that they know to look for that stuff. There's things that you would do in a gym that you wouldn't want to do out in the street, right? You have to train a little bit different. So understanding that that level of training and what you do makes a big difference on your ability to defend yourself out in the streets.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about like runners. Okay, so in comparison to maybe how you train or who you train, because you primarily train law enforcement. You do women's self defense
Yep.
and so, but from a running perspective in that environment, so most runners, you think about like Eliza Fletcher. She was running first thing in the morning, so during the dark.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't recall if she had headphones in or not. Uh, but a runner is not carrying very much, very light clothing. It's summertime, so shorts, tank, maybe some earbuds, maybe a cell phone on them, maybe a water bottle, and they're engaged in this. What I guess my questions are like, what are some of the vulnerabilities that you see with a female that might be who's dressed for running versus like when you're giving a real estate conference or law
Right.
enforcement or these other groups of people you train.
Yep. So let me first jump in, just so your listeners know, right? I mess with Jay all the time. I'm a retired runner now. So I used to run, so I understand the running piece of it, right?
So
And
Lorenzo says he's retired. We've had the virtual Marine Corps marathon. He's hosted this from his house the last couple of years, but for whatever reason, last year he said that he's retired. However, people always come out of retirement.
not
We'll
yet,
run it again. It's going to
not yet.
happen again.
Yeah, not retired yet. I've had my share.
Lorenzo is he's familiar with ultra distance running.
Yes, yes, too familiar. So, but I think that's one of the big
Quitter.
things. I think that's one of the big things is, you hit on a few things. I know it's miserable to run without headphones, right? I enjoy listening to music when I run when I can. But that is a big hindrance because you can't hear people coming up to you. You can't hear those things that are going on around you, to know that. The other side of it is that running at night piece, and running somewhere where there's a lot of people around. I got it. It sucks to run during the day, right? Sometimes the mornings are the only times that you can get that in. But I think running in a group would drastically lower that risk of somebody trying to do something, because there's safety in numbers, right?
Mhm.
People aren't going to attack 20 people, but they're going to attack one, because they know they have a big fight to put up against a large number. So I would say that's a big piece of it. And keeping your head up and looking when you're running, right? Most of us get into that tunnel vision and we just look at what's in front of us and we're worried about that next rock we're going to trip over or that next curb we got to get up. But we never take time to look around and see what's around us, see who's following us, see what is out of the norm. Those are big things. And I think the other piece is having a plan. So anytime I would go on a run, I would always make sure that at least two people knew where I was going. My wife would usually know, and I'd usually text a buddy and say, "Hey, I'm going for a run. This is my route, and this is about how long it's going to take me." As far as dress, um, I always tell people your dress doesn't matter if you get the techniques down, right? I can defend myself wearing a 3-piece suit. I can defend myself wearing my Lululemon shorts and my Do Hard Things shirt, right? So the dress doesn't necessarily matter in that piece. It's the skills that you develop and that you train in are what are ultimately gonna save you.
Lorenzo got me hooked on Lululemons. He introduced me to the Lululemon pants, and I'm a significant fan. So as you said that, I started laughing.
Life-changing clothing.
But so you gave some great some great tips there, right? Try not to run in the dark. Don't run with headphones on. Run with a pack of people. I think by and large, most of us try to do that when we can. There's group runs. But especially this time of year, as it's starting to. I mean, I think it's at a point now where the sun comes up at 7. It sets before 7, or it's only going to get darker as it goes on. And here's the deal with runners, especially the ones that are really dedicated. They're going to go run by themselves. It's a form of therapy to go run. So we try to run when we can with other people. We try to run during daylight hours when we can, but look, we all have lives and careers and kids. We got to get it up and get it done early. Um, so let's talk about how someone can be safe with who's going to run by themselves, and what are some considerations that they would need to increase their chance of survival and running another day.
Yeah. So let's I'm going to kind of summarize this, and then we can go into a little bit more detail, but we can give people tips and tricks and things that they can do to make themselves a little bit harder of a target, right? But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is being prepared in advance for that technique, right? Or sorry, for that attack. And that comes through a physical self-defense program, right? A physical self-defense training, because, I can give you all the latest and the greatest, tips, wear reflective stuff, be seen in public. But the reality of it is bad people are everywhere. I mean, there's people following people around Walmart and taking them in a parking lot, right? But the actual self-defense techniques and being able to defend yourself against somebody physically attacking you is your best option, and is the best thing you could do for yourself for when those situations arise.
Okay. So what, without being able to demonstrate, because it'd be very difficult to do that, but could you talk us through some tips or techniques that would be valuable in like breaking contact? Or are there different types of moves that you can do? I'm not sure how you categorize them.
Yeah. So there's different types of techniques, right? That you can do. So we use the program we teach is called the Equalizer program, and our motto of our program is prepared in advance, right? Just be prepared in advance. Don't want to try to make this stuff up when the time comes and when the time's needed. So, basic foundations that we try to instill in people to learn when they would come to one of our courses is a common grab defense. So that initial grab, right? Somebody grabs your wrist, somebody grabs your arm, and tries to pull you where you don't want to go. So, learning how to, we call it create a good base, create a good foundation where you're hard to move. Most people, when they are trying to attack somebody or go after somebody, they're looking for that easy target. They're looking for that person that is not going to put up a fight. And by putting up a fight, the longer you put up a fight, the more your chances of that person letting you go and going to a different target increase.
I like that you say that, because even in the military, on military operations, right, we would talk about like you have to have that posture of, hey, I'm alert, I'm paying attention to my surroundings, I got my head on a swivel.
Yeah.
Versus, and when we were in Iraq, that would happen. The units that typically got attacked or selected for ambush were the ones that didn't have discipline in their formations. They weren't paying attention, and so there's a lot to be said for just having the posture of being prepared and that you're aware versus just being completely oblivious.
Right. So, and think about this, Jake. So one of the things that we teach is, and I'm going to use Walmart as an example, right? Most people, when they leave Walmart, they're walking out of the store. They usually have bags in their hands. They're fumbling with their keys. They're reading the text messages that they left since the checkout stand, right? And they're walking through a parking lot to their car this way. Well, in doing that, you're distracted, right? You have a lot of stuff going on around you. So what we tell you is, before you leave those doors of that store, you would put your phone in your pocket. The only things in your hands need to be those bags that you just of product you just purchased, and your car keys. And while you're walking out to your vehicle, your head's on a swivel and you're looking for things that make you feel uncomfortable. Right? I don't like to use the word threats, right? Because we don't know what a threat is. We don't know what a threat looks like, right? A threat could be your cousin. A threat could be your family member. So you're looking for things that make you feel uncomfortable out there. And when you find those things, we teach you to address them. So if you're walking through the parking lot and you have that guy or girl you keep catching out of the corner of your eye, and you're like, ah, man, something doesn't feel right. Something's not, making me feel uneasy about this situation. We're not going to ignore it. We're going to stop. We're going to turn to them in a confident posture, and we're going to ask them if they need help, right? So that's one of the first things that we teach with our women equalizer classes. We have them walk, and they team up with a partner, and they see this person, and we tell them, hey, this person is making you feel uncomfortable, and you're going to stop, and you're going to look at them, and you're going to be very confident. You're going to ask them, can I help you? Is there something you need? Do you need help finding somewhere? Do you need directions? And let them know, hey, I see you over there, and you're making, they don't know you're making they're making you uncomfortable, but they know that you're aware of their presence. And that alone can stop somebody from pursuing or going on, because again, it goes back to that, they want an easy target. They want to find somebody who's not going to put up that fight and that they're just going to be able to grab and take. So let's continue on, and maybe we don't see that person. Well, now you walk to your car, you open your door, you put your stuff in the back seat, trunk, wherever it is, you close the door, you get inside your car. The first thing you do when you get in that car is hit that lock button. Very first thing you do. Now you're in a secure, safe spot. Somebody can't get to you. Now you turn on your car. Now you check those text messages that you missed in the last 30, 45 seconds. You make those phone calls. You put your seatbelt on. You reach into your back seat and grab whatever it is you need out of those bags. But you're in a safe and secure spot now. And just by making those little bit of changes, you've made yourself a harder target for somebody.
Yeah, you got to make yourself harder to kill. I love addressing. That's an excellent point, because oftentimes I think our natural instinct is like, okay, don't make eye contact, look away. There's a creep over there. I'm not going to look at him. No, I like address them. Let them know that you're aware, because the likelihood of them doing anything to you has probably just been diminished. Kind of goes back to having that posturing of I'm aware of what's going on, because they're generally looking at people that are oblivious.
Yeah, and you got to be confident with it, right? I can't turn to you, looking at, making me feel uncomfortable. I'm like, can I help you? Right? I mean, I need to let you know, like, can I help you? Do you need something? And you know what? If they didn't, well, then you know what? It's okay, right? They might get their feelings hurt, but guess what? You're safe. You're gonna be able to get to your car. You're gonna be able to go home that day. Especially if they were a threat.
Yeah. And I also appreciate, hey, just do a quick reset before you walk out. You're leaving the checkout, and before you walk out the door, you're posturing yourself in a position. Get your keys out, get your phone ready, just get yourself ready to walk out the door, as opposed to I'm just rushing and I'm being oblivious again, and I'm just trying, I like the thought of, let's just take a quick tactical pause for a second and just prepare for our exit from the store, especially at night, right? During the day, the chances I think as you're describing all this, I'm always thinking nighttime, because that's probably the highest risk of something happening to you. But it's the same with what I teach in high performance. There's the doorway is a trigger. Anytime that you walk through a doorway, you change your energy, or before you walk into the next doorway, it's like you're going to quickly remind yourself the mindset tricks. This is applicable in this scenario as well, because the mindset is, okay, I want to get out to my car safely. I'm going to have my head on a swivel, maybe paying attention. I'm constantly with my kids when we go to Walmart, like, do you know where we're parked? And I'll let them, okay, you're going to guide us back to the car. Are you paying attention to where you're at and what you're doing? And I think that just like you said, having awareness and addressing those things is a pretty simple technique that could be very useful.
Right. There's a video that I've watched recently, and it's gosh, it was on one of the social media platforms. I don't remember, but it was a lady and her daughter, and there was a guy following them around Walmart, and they noticed him. And as they got to the door, they noticed that person followed them to the door, and they stopped right before the last set of doors, and they noticed another guy doing the same thing that the guy behind them was doing. So they were recording. One was recording this. The other one was getting on the phone and calling for help. And she asked the guy, "Can I help you? Do you need something? Hey, we see you following us around." And then what came of that is the guy that was behind her following her kept jumping on his phone. Every time they would look back, he'd act like he was on his phone. Well, then the guy that was in front of them in the parking lot was on his phone. Well, when she started saying something to these guys, well, then a third guy jumped up on his phone that was sitting to the right that she hadn't noticed. And a fourth guy to the left of the doors got on his phone. And then a guy circled around in a truck, and all four of those guys jumped into that truck and took off.
Oh,
And,
wow.
I think back to, what if she wasn't paying attention and aware of her surroundings? Where would her and her daughter be today, right? Would we be hearing about them on Fox News? And the fact that she had the confidence to look at those people and ask them and tell them, hey, I see you following me around. Hey, do you need something? Is there something wrong that you're following me around? Caused them to retreat and go away. And, she wasn't that target that day anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of human trafficking, abductions that are taking place on a regular basis. I don't know why it's not talked about more, but it happens often. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so here you got an entire team of guys working together, and because she paid attention and addressed them, they broke contact and left.
Yep.
It's super freaky. Where did that happen?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember where it happened. It was here in the United States, but I don't remember what state it was in.
Yeah, but that scenario
But it's a scary
happens.
feeling.
Yeah, no, that's terrifying. That's terrifying to but yeah, so there's evil out there. And but I like the effect. I mean, animals in nature do this, right? You got the
Right.
puffer fish. I think of like a peacock, I think it's basically, fluffing yourself up, right? Like I'm ready, I'm aware, and that defense mechanism is enough to, thwart off that hunter, that the predator that's hunting them.
Right.
And so that
Yeah.
is a technique that doesn't require any level of training other than just being aware.
Yeah. Just keep your head up and out of your phone. That's the big thing, right? And that's why I tell people, before you leave, take the phone and put it in your pocket, not in your hand, because you're going to be tempted to look up, right? It goes off, you're going to boop, you're going to look up, and you're going to look down at it. And that time that you look down could be the time that somebody pulls up next to you and pulls you in a car. Because I'll tell you, Jay, it takes that long for somebody to pull you into a car.
Yeah. No,
You know,
it's
it doesn't take long. But going back to what we were talking about earlier, you know, knowing how to create a good base, knowing how to redirect when somebody's pulling you, makes a big difference in the ability for somebody to grab you. There's things that we teach in our program that I couldn't demonstrate on here, right? It's one of those things that you have to feel to understand. And next time we're together, I'll show you some of it. But there's little things that you can do to make yourself harder to pick up, to make yourself a harder fight for that individual, and hopefully a fight to the point where they won't want to continue, with you.
okay. So we've kind of talked about just basic awareness, addressing someone, and having that posture of being on offense. What else can someone do to mitigate? So when I was talking to Taryn the other day, what she said was, this happens quite a bit. She's running, and someone will drive up really slow next to her. What would you recommend someone do if they're like just driving up real slow and they're staring, being creepy? What do you recommend they do?
So my recommendation is create as much space as you can between that vehicle or that person that's making you feel uncomfortable. Right? Space is our friend in that pre-attack. Right?
Hmm.
We want to create distance and get as much distance from them. Imagine this: if you were pulling up, if I was running and you were bad guy in this scenario, and your goal was to pull me into that car, and I keep running alongside the road, there's a high chance you're going to commit to what your goal is, right? And it's to get me into that car.
Hmm.
But if you have to get out of that car and run 8, 10, 12 feet, and then you know that you're going to have to fight me to get back, right? Because I'm not just going to go with you.
Hmm.
The chances are you're going to go, you know what? That person up the road, they're staying in the road, right? So maybe I'm going to go after that person today. So by creating that and getting yourself distance from that situation, you're increasing your odds that they're not going to pick you that day.
Mm, mm. Yeah, no, excellent, excellent tip there. When I think about someone that is, I'm trying to think of what Taryn said the other day. She said something about, so she was driving. So we have the bridge out here on Superior Road.
Hmm.
Superior Road is a gravel road, very popular route for runners. The bridge is a kind of a sketchy place. I was actually running out there the other morning, and my head was definitely on a swivel because I'm like, man, this is an excellent place to get ambushed. You could because there's some
Yeah,
columns there. You could literally park a car on the other side, and you could quickly run out and grab someone. And so, I made sure I had my headlamp, and my head's on a swivel. I'm looking at everything. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I just you got to look for those sites where if you were put yourself in an attacker's position, where would you ambush someone? And maybe that's just my natural from years of training in the military, but that's when I'm out on a route, I'm looking at places like that, like bridges,
those danger areas.
overpasses, those danger areas, where someone would be prone to attack
Right.
you. Or,
No, and I think that is very important, right? Kind of I put myself in the mindset of, if I was bad guy, what would I do? Where
yeah.
would I be at? And I pay attention to those areas, right? Because here's the thing is, when you play games like those in your head of, if I was bad guy, what would I do? Where would I go? Odds are you're gonna think of more things and a worse scenario than would actually play out.
Mm-hmm.
But you're able to look at areas that normally people wouldn't look at, right? People
Mm-hmm.
would just, like you said, they just run by and not think twice about, one of those pillars that are holding the freeway up. To
Mm-hmm.
them, it's a pillar that holds a freeway up. To you, it was somewhere where somebody could put a car behind and hide.
Yeah. Yeah. Taryn had mentioned when she runs and someone is acting kind of peculiar, she said she has a photo album and she just snaps a photo.
Yeah.
And I found that to be a really good, handy use of a tool, right? Because your phone, not only could you call for help, but you can also gather evidence.
Yes.
Um, do you have any tips or techniques when it comes to, from a law enforcement perspective, what would be useful to dealing with someone that could be harassing someone or perpetuating a crime?
Yeah. So let's go back real quick before we get into that. You had mentioned about her taking a picture of
Mhm,
something that made her feel uncomfortable. And I think another training tool that's important for people to do is to train your mind to remember things, right? So sometimes in some of our training, some of them call them like Kim's games, right? Of put some things out, give yourself X amount of time to look at them, and then go back and in detail try to write as much as you can about those items, right? See somebody in the day, and maybe 3 or 4 hours later, maybe at the end of the day, try to describe that person to somebody else, and give them a visual picture of what that person looked like. Because that's the biggest thing, for law enforcement, for us, is we need descriptions to be able to go out and find these bad guys, these people that are doing things to people. And a lot of the times we'll get, well, he was a white male, and he was about 6'5". Cool. What else can you tell me? He had clothes on. Color was his hair. Couldn't tell you. Color were his eyes. I couldn't tell you. Well, let me ask you, Jay, how many people in your town are white males that are 6 foot?
dude, you just described me, man.
Right? But being able to describe somebody, right? He's bald. You know, his eye color. Did he have facial hair? Did
Mhm,
she have, hair that was short, hair that was long? But being able to describe things of that nature, right? What were they wearing? Did they have tattoos? Did they have markings? Those are all important details that play a big role in law enforcement being able to catch somebody, but play a big role in your ability to help find this person. Because here's the deal: at the end of the day, that phone can get taken, right? That phone can get lost, it
mhm.
can get destroyed, and then we have nothing. but your memory, there's a less likelihood of that being damaged to the point where you don't remember than there is of a phone being damaged or broken or lost, or let's say that person does attack you and you have to take off running, and you drop your phone. Now what?
No, it's an excellent point. We can crutch a little bit too much on our phone. I like the idea of, head on a swivel, being more aware, practicing your memorization.
Yeah, and maybe you do both of them. We would do training with people where, I think one of the funnest training events I ever did is we were doing a class on this, right, on mindfulness and being able to remember things. And at the beginning of the class, none of us knew. Somebody ran into the classroom, screamed at the instructor, and took off out of the classroom, right? And we were all like, what the heck just happened? And then we go through this class and we start talking about these things, right? How to remember stuff and, things to pick up on and look for. And then the last 5 minutes of the class, the instructor goes, hey, describe to me that guy that ran in and yelled at me earlier. And we were like, it was a male? Like, we didn't know. And that things like those type of trainings, I think are very valuable to being able to defend yourself too, in a way that, you can help remember what those people look like. Think about it. How many times on the news have you seen, we're looking for a blue truck with a Missouri license plate that was seen in the area of Highway 17 and Route 66. Right?
Yeah,
Now
pretty vague. Yeah.
Imagine if that person were to be able to remember license plate numbers, if they were trained to be able to know the color. Look at the driver and get a description of the driver, and then give that to law enforcement. Imagine the help that would be in catching that person.
Yeah, the more details, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I know I've got a poor memory in general. I got to write things down and be very diligent about that. But definitely something that can be practiced and rehearsed, and would increase your odds and give more details to law enforcement. So
yeah,
I like the idea of practicing that.
Yep. And here's another thing that I'll throw out there to think about. And I'm gonna kind of gear towards the people that have the mindset of, well, I carry a firearm when I run, or I carry a taser when I run. Right? We kind of talked on a little bit earlier about, those are great tools to have if you know when to use them and how to use them. And I think this is where a self-defense piece comes in. And the way we kind of describe it is, imagine this, right? And we're going to put martial arts into this into this category, in this conversation that we're having right now. Okay. So imagine this. Imagine UFC, right? Everybody knows who the UFC is and what they do, right? You got two guys in a cage. They have a set of rules, and they have to abide by those rules. So imagine this. If one of them had a firearm on them, right? Let's say you're an MMA fighter, Jay, and your opponent has a firearm on them. Would you change the way that you trained versus that opponent that doesn't? Okay. Yeah, now imagine this. We're going to take the firearm out, right? And UFC changes the rules and says, hey, listen, when your fighter is down and it looks like they're going to lose, coach, you can jump in and help them. Would you change the way that you train?
Yes.
Right. And we have to look at that for martial arts and for those people that carry firearms, right? Is we're in a different area now, right? We're not in on a range where the rules are everybody has to stay here, everybody has to stay here. You can't touch my gun. My gun's in my holster. It's safe. And we're not in a gym where there's rules of, well, hey, you can't eye poke them this time. Hey, you can't bite them. Because I tell you, in a fight on a street, there are no rules. If I can bite you, I'm going to bite you. If I can stick my thumb in your eye and cause you to lose vision to win a fight, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to stick my thumb in your eye, right? And I think people have to understand that piece of it with regards to firearms and to training in a gym. Is self-defense on the street is a lot different than going to the gym and doing jujitsu, than going to the gym and doing karate, taekwondo, Muay Thai, right? Going to the range and shooting all these competitions because, I kind of hinted a little bit earlier is if you pull out your gun while I'm close enough to hit you, to grab you, and while I'm physically attacking you, I'm close enough to take that firearm from you and use it against you.
Hmm.
And I think that that's a situation where people have to think about, and where I'm big on is self-defense, the physical piece, the learning to defend against a bear hug, learning to defend against a headlock, learning how to get somebody off of you and get away, to create distance to get to those tools is very important. And I don't want listeners and people out there who may hear this to get a false sense of security in I have a firearm, because I tell you can't always get to it, and you don't always want to.
Hmm.
And having those physical skills to be able to push somebody away to get the distance to get to those tools is very important and very valuable.
I think you make an excellent point in regards to not always having the firearm, because there are times I carry often, but there are times that I don't carry. And it's got to do with how much time do I have? Where am I going? Because some places don't allow
Right.
firearms and you just don't always have it. So just relying that solely is probably not smart. In addition to, I also think in a firearm, sometimes I think and this is unfortunate, because of the laws, you can actually get yourself in trouble if you're not paying attention to the firearm and how sometimes it's just easier not to deal with it or take it, right? And that's
And there's some
unfortunate.
people, yeah,
It's unfortunate that we have laws that are like that, but that's just the way it is.
right.
And yeah, I think that you need to have enough tools to, well, one, have awareness. Secondly, be able to break space or create space between you so you can get away to either get help or get your firearm or whatever else you need to do to survive. And so, do you have what is your recommendation? Someone's listening to this, they have no training, they don't have any training like hand to hand, they don't have any training in firearms. Which route would you recommend they go first, or what advice would you give someone that is seeking training that has no training at all?
So first advice is find a self-defense course, um, to train. Kind of like I hinted to a little bit earlier. Going to a MMA gym, going to a martial arts gym, while they are great, you have to be able to condition yourself first to be able to defend yourself, right? Um, so finding a self defense course, that is credible, that is has a reputation for being a good product, and that has been proven. We have the equalizer program, and we have women that have used our program in real world situations, unfortunately, but they've come out of it, to speak another day, to train another day. So I think the first thing that people need to do is find a self defense um, class that is specific to the topic of self defense.
And then what is your opinion on using non-lethal like mace and other implements versus then going lethal?
So my thing is create the distance, get the physical distance between you and that person, right? And then you gain those through those self-defense classes. And then from there, it relies on the individual, right? That person that's getting attacked, on what they're comfortable with using and what they're comfortable with carrying, right? And how they use it, because just kind of like you hinted at earlier about, there's laws in states about, gun and what you can and can't do, and it's easy to get yourself into a legal bind. um, Believe it or not, there's states that restrict tasers. There's states
Mm.
that restrict certain types of pepper spray. So I think getting in and digging into the laws of your state and really understanding what you can and can't do.
Yeah, because we, especially for a lot of runners, we travel across state lines to go to races and events and things like that.
Hmm.
Just think about like traveling to Michigan to do the Ragnar, right? So we're going up into an unfamiliar town. We had to cross into Illinois. Illinois is not a very friendly gun state. I have no idea what the laws are in Michigan. And like I said, you can get yourself into some trouble just trying to maneuver through what's legal, what's not legal. But if you have some basics in self-defense, no one can ever take that knowledge away from you. That's why knowledge is power, right? Because it's one of those things that with some practice, it can be enough to get you out of a situation.
Right. And here's the other thing, Jay, is because some of your listeners are probably going, well, this guy's he's a martial artist. He does jujitsu, and he's telling us to go find self defense, not to go to jujitsu, right? And I think it comes down to your conditioning, right? So imagine this: if in a gym, right, we can punch each other in the face, we can punch each other in the stomach and in the chest, right? Because we have gloves on, right? Boxers can do that over and over because they have gloves on. So imagine that you go to the gym every day, right? And you go to this boxing class and you go to this Muay Thai class and you punch, right? And that's all you do is you punch and you get really good at punching. And now you're out in a self-defense scenario, right? You're fighting for your life, and let's say you are a concealed carrier, okay? And you get with this guy and you lay back and you punch him and the guy doesn't go down, but you're able to create a little bit of distance. Well, you have nothing protecting your hand, so there's a high probability that you're going to break that hand. Let's go back to the range where you had to do a course, right, for your CCW, and you had to make a qualification. Would you want to do that qualification with your hand broken?
Oh no.
Then why would you want to fight for your life with a firearm with a broken hand? And that's why I tell people you need to go to a self-defense class that conditions you to use techniques that are work in the street. And then once you get really good at those, then go find yourself a gym to train at, if you can. But if you can't differentiate between the two, then you could do yourself a little bit more harm by going and joining, a gym where you don't know what you can and can't use on the streets.
Yeah. Well, let's be real. Most runners, if you're listening to this and you're a runner, you're probably not gonna go sign up for jujitsu and take that regular class, right? Because you're gonna want to go run, or because we don't have enough time to run and do the strength and conditioning, let alone trying to wedge in a jujitsu class. It doesn't make sense. But I like the self-defense class it's the down and dirty knowledge that you need that's going to be applicable to a street scenario. It's the basics of what you need. It's enough to get you by. How often would you need to go to a self-defense class?
I think it's going to come down to the individual, and how long it takes you to be comfortable with the technique. And here's the other thing with that, right? Is I can take you to a self-defense class, but unless you have the commitment to train outside of that class, I'm not going to be able to make you to 100% defend yourself in an 8-hour course. It's not going
Yeah.
to happen, right? But you have to take that course, and the way that those techniques will work is if you take the time to continue to train them outside of that course that
Yeah.
you go to. And I think that's an important piece of it is the continuing training. Can you go to one course and defend yourself? Absolutely. How effective are you going to be? Well, that kind of comes down to the
Well, it
person.
depends
How much
about
are you paying?
how much commitment you want to put into it,
Yeah.
right? Which is, let's be realistic. People have different priorities in their life,
Yeah.
and a lot of runners aren't, you know, just being honest, they're not going to commit the same level of they're not going to have the same level of dedication to their self-defense as they are their running or the other activities that they're, but
Eh,
it's worthwhile to go take a course every so often and do some basic drills, maybe find a partner to go with, and have the conversation and brush up on it so you can be fresh.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to it's become one of my favorite words that you've given us through the Forge is priority, right? You have
Yeah.
to prioritize your safety. Um, I've seen people that will not go and train because they use the old excuse of I don't have time to do that. And I say, well, wouldn't it be sad if you didn't have time to run because you're sitting in a hospital, or you don't have time to run anymore because maybe you're not alive anymore, because you wouldn't take the 1 hour a week to be able to train yourself to defend yourself, to allow you the opportunities to keep going. And I think what people need to do is they need to prioritize um, self-defense and prioritize the ability to be able to defend themselves over you know that of what they enjoy every once in a while.
Yeah, no, priorities, right? So I think that we need to take. There's a phrase that comes to my head that I really appreciate. It's a Chinese proverb. It's I'd rather be the warrior in the garden rather than the gardener in the war. And
Mm,
really, what that means is just being prepared, having a basic level of preparedness. You don't need to be a martial arts expert, but you don't need to be walking around with your head in the sand like nothing's going to happen and be a
right.
victim, right?
Yeah.
So, with just a little bit of effort, you can get yourself out of that complete victim, head in the sand mentality to being enough to be proficient enough to break contact and survive if something were to happen to you, and
Absolutely.
having a level of awareness, and and I think that's important. And I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to take an active role in our self preservation and doing those things. So,
No,
so yeah.
absolutely.
Well, we're getting close to an hour. So, what else would be beneficial to a runner?
Beneficial for them is just having prioritizing that self-defense piece, getting
Hmm.
out there, putting that to the forefront of it, and keeping your head on a swivel, right? Be aware of your surroundings, and look around, and make a conscious effort, right? Tell yourself, look around and identify something around you, identify a new vehicle, a new person. And when you identify that stuff, those things that make you feel uncomfortable, stop for a second, address it, determine the threat level, and then either move on, or deal with whatever it is that's in front of you. But be prepared
Just
to
be
do
prepared.
that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'll throw in here, I've talked about our equalizer program a few times. The website for that is www.goequalizer.com. It's our women's self-defense program, and there's a lot of tips and stuff on there that the listeners can go on, and they can actually read in there of things that we've recommended, and things that we think you should be mindful of when you're out doing your everyday life, to be able to. And it also has a link to all of the courses that we're putting on. And we're always looking for hosts and people that want to put on these type of courses for their friends, neighbors, and themselves too.
Yeah. And you're willing to travel too, right? You can
Oh yeah,
travel to,
we will
okay.
travel anywhere to put on a course, and we'll work with people and companies to put these courses on, in their local areas.
Awesome. No, that's fantastic. So great resource. We'll put the links if you want to reach out to Lorenzo and explore opportunities for self-defense training for you or your organization. He'll be available to do that. So,
Yeah.
well, man, hey, I appreciate you taking the time coming on today. I think this is an incredibly important topic. I know a lot of people in the running community right now are aware. I hope if you're listening to this later, we have to continue to living life on offense means taking an active role in your self-preservation and your own self-defense. And the bottom line is evil is out there. You may not think it's going to happen to you, but it can. You need to be prepared when the time comes. Just being prepared
Yeah.
and taking a course and doing a little bit of training can go a long way to, um, you know, running another day, right? And not being a victim. It's tragic that we live in a world like this, but that's the way it is. And if you're just relying on law enforcement or you're just relying on a firearm, you know, it's it may not be sufficient enough. It's probably not sufficient enough. So,
Hmm.
anything else, Lorenzo, we need to know before we call it a
Only
day?
other thing I'll say is, you mentioned earlier, I have the podcast Force Multiplier for law enforcement. Well, we have for law enforcement. We talk a lot about self-defense on that podcast that is very applicable to everybody. So if you're looking just for some thought-provoking conversations in the topic of self-defense. You can go through and look at the different topics that we have on there, but there's a lot of stuff that would be very applicable to people wanting to learn about self-defense, over the episodes that we have there.
Awesome. Well, in the near future, we talked about this for this podcast. We unfortunately, due to timing, we couldn't do it today, but maybe we can put together some videos or some demonstrations or some basic things people can do. We can put it into the I've got the Run Smart Academy running community. We can upload some of those videos in there and put it out to our community too. So I appreciate you taking the time to being here, man. Appreciate the work that you're doing. So
appreciate you.
All right, brother. Well, we'll talk soon. For everyone else out there, keep doing hard things. We'll see you guys in the next episode.